Hello, BookTube, and welcome to Comic Book Wednesday. I missed Comic Book Wednesday for a while in 2019 because my 2019 has not had the best start to it. But a couple of weeks ago, one of the things I would have done on Comic Book Wednesday was this: Conan the Barbarian, #1, from Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics now has the franchise for the Robert E. Howard Conan world, the Hyborian Age, the all of that stuff that Marvel Comics once upon a time did have. They introduced Conan to Marvel Comics with this. This is a wonderful treat. Came out in the same week. Conan the Barbarian #1. The Coming of Conan. These True Believer issues that Marvel is doing, they come out with ancillary stuff, so they know they've got something on the newsstand that's new and that they're going to charge. What was this? $5? Yeah, this is $5. And to sort of supplement that, if they've got a new miniseries of Daredevil, they will reprint. They'll come out with a couple of True Believer $1 reprints of canonical text from that character. I think it's a great idea. I think it's fantastic. I know they've done it for a long time, and I've just missed out on a lot. But it was wonderful and surreal to get the two Marvel Comics Conan #1s at the comic shop on the same time. The Coming of Conan, Conan the Barbarian #1, with scripting by Roy Thomas, a huge sword and sorcery fan, although not necessarily a huge Conan fan. He would have been happy to make his own sword and sorcery character for Marvel back in 1970. But Marvel got the rights to Conan and everything else, the whole kit and caboodle. And Roy Thomas was also, once he got those rights and got involved, and he did this first issue from nearly 50 years ago. Now, that is just unbelievable to me. This first issue has artwork by Barry Windsor Smith. I don't think he was even called Barry Windsor Smith at this time. I think he was just called Barry Smith. Yeah, he was just called Barry Smith. And his artwork, let me show you an example here. His artwork in this first issue and in a couple of issues to follow is extremely Kirby-esque. It is, I don't know, those of you who are connoisseurs of comic book art will notice that does not look like what Barry Windsor Smith would later do. In fact, what he would later do on Conan itself. And there was magic about this. There was magic about Roy Thomas' handling of this, and it took off. Roy Thomas invented a whole bunch, extrapolated on a whole bunch, brought a whole bunch of Conan lore from the stories and novels into comic books and expanded on them, came up with a whole bunch of great ideas on his own, and wrote Conan for a long time, well over 200 issues. That's a massive run, even by the standards of 50 years ago. And then Marvel lost the franchise, the Robert E. Howard franchise. It went to Dark Horse. And I feared the worst. And I don't know why that was, because by the time Marvel lost the franchise to Conan, the work that was being done on Conan was not very good. I was still buying issues out of loyalty, but the artwork was so lazy and the stories were so convoluted that I don't know why I really bothered. There's a certain grim jolt of satisfaction to Conan. And if you don't get that, then the issues aren't worth it. And so I feared the worst when it went to Dark Horse, and instead Dark Horse did superior work, just incredible, some incredible runs on Conan, just all throughout the whole time that they had access to the franchise. And then Marvel got the franchise back. So we're on this Comic Book Wednesday, we're talking about Conan, which feels like a bit of an artificial bit of stage management, but I promise you, it's just a coincidence that we would be talking about Conan the Barbarian on a day when, thanks to the Gillette shaving razor company, the whole of the chattering classes are talking about toxic masculinity. the toxic masculinity, I would imagine, in the eyes of quite a few social justice warrior progressives, doesn't get any worse than Conan the Barbarian. But the reason that I'm talking about it, even though that first issue is two weeks old now, is because the second issue came out today. So once again, when I was at the comic shop, I was buying an issue of Conan the Barbarian. The first issue, this one here, was incredible. Just incredibly good. The writing was by Jason Aaron, and the artwork was by Mahmoud Asrar. I don't think I know this Mahmoud Asrar, but oh my. His artwork is just amazing. Just amazing. Look at that. You won't be able to see much in this lighting, but it's just incredible. And 2 weeks later, here we have the second issue, which has the same creative team, but is not part of the same story. Here we go to, this one ended with, the first issue ended with a cliffhanger, and is very satisfyingly told in two different eras of Conan's life. One when he's king, and other from decades earlier when he's a young warrior. And I kind of expected, it ends on a cliffhanger, so I kind of expected issue number 2 to take up that story right away, and it doesn't. Instead, it tells a very satisfying, separate story of a young Conan beset by wild Picts in the jungles beyond the Black River, and gradually winning their respect, and them winning his. And it's a very, very satisfying story. And extremely, I couldn't help but notice, I mean, I buy comics for art, and I'm a big art fan, but I couldn't help but notice how well written this issue was. You opened some of the pages, I don't know if I'll be able to find, yeah, this, just at first glance, looks anathema to a Conan story. Look at all that talk on that page. And yet it's all done really well. It's all done so well that I didn't mind at all. I loved it. This wasn't the only issue that I got today, because Marvel is, once again, they are continuing to do True Believers. $1 reprints of classic stuff from their canon, and this week both True Believer issues were once again old issues of Conan. This one is Curse of the Golden Skull, with writing by Roy Thomas and artwork by Neil Adams, proving in this issue that, you know, that he just didn't have the feel for doing Conan. It just didn't. Kind of strange. You'd kind of think he would, but no. No. Batman, maybe. The Avengers, occasionally. Other things, okay, but not Conan. So you have to read this issue to enjoy it. The artwork is wretched throughout. And then the other one is this, The Queen of the Black Coast, which introduces Belit, the female Corsair captain, who in the original run of Marvel Comics, Roy Thomas just lets her be in Conan for a long time, where they become lovers. In fact, they do so in this first issue. And the way they do so is very much not 2019 college campus progressive equality. Very much not at all. Conan finds himself, he's on a merchant ship when they are attacked by Belit's pirates, and everyone is killed except Conan, and he is facing a forest of spears and looking to die fighting himself, when Belit notices that he's huge and looks grim and doesn't seem like any man she's ever met, even though she has a wide experience with reaving up and down the coast. So she challenges him to fight her chosen champion, the biggest and strongest man in her crew, and Conan wins, of course. And when he wins, this is artwork by John Buscema, who did most of Conan under Roy Thomas's helm, and does some wonderful stuff. I mean, his artwork got extremely lazy, but only after decades. At the beginning, he's really, really good. He also did some fantastic issues of Savage Sword of Conan, which Marvel brought out 50 years ago as a larger black and white magazine format of Conan adventures that could sidestep the Comics Code Authority and make the gore and the sex both a little more explicit. I love them both. I never missed an issue of Conan the Barbarian, and I never missed an issue of Savage Sword of Conan. I love them. I don't know where my issues went. It's a weird hodgepodge of what I've managed to keep, flotsam and jetsam of 50 years. But I loved them. And in this panel, once Conan has bested Belit's champion, she says, "Take me, Conan. Take me and crush me with your fierce love. Go with me to the ends of the earth and the ends of the sea, for I am queen by fire and steel and slaughter. Be thou my king." And as if that weren't explicit enough, once Conan says, all right, I'll sail with you, she dances herself into his arms. That is how the issue ends. I'm pretty sure, I mean, I don't go in much for the whole Comicsgate debate about Marvel Comics, but I had pretty much given up on the idea that I would ever see that Marvel would ever acknowledge this sort of stuff was part of their past, much less come out with issues like this that are explicitly Conan-esque. Conan is not a superhero. He's a towering, glowering, violent barbarian from the northern wastelands of Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age, who comes south, meets all sorts of adventures, all sorts of villainous men, rampaging armies, and also fantastic array of supernatural creatures and wizards. And there's nothing PC about him at all. He sees all men. He takes them straight on. He's a thief, a reaver, a slayer. And I was kind of surprised when Marvel took this franchise. I thought that they wouldn't be interested in it, first. And second, I thought if they took it, they would immediately start giving us a PC Conan, which would be worse, a fate worse than death. It would be worse than lazy art, be worse than lazy writing. To violently subvert the character would be just... that would be bad. And these first two issues do not give me that impression at all. They're quite the opposite. So my comics for this Wednesday is just an array of Conan. It's just 2 new issues and 3 old issues from what is going to be a new era of Conan the Barbarian, who is now run by Marvel Comics. And one of the things that I'm very much looking forward to, it's kind of hard for me to believe, but nevertheless, one of the things I'm very much looking forward to, in addition to Conan the Barbarian every month, is that Marvel Comics is going to relaunch The Savage Sword of Conan. It happens, I think, next week or the week after that. And they're also doing, I don't know if I have a... Yes. They're making up for lost time in a big way by giving Baylit herself a comic. That's never been done, and that's wonderful. All that remains, all that remains. I mean, it's great. So we're going to get Conan the Barbarian, and we're going to get Savage Sword of Conan every month, I hope. And we'll also get either a series or a mini-series about Baylit. That leaves 2 things. That leaves 2 things that we absolutely need. You could do with more. But if Marvel owns this franchise, the 2 things I would like to see, you could probably, those of you who are Conan fans, or comic book Conan fans, will know right away. I want to see Red Sonja have her own comic book. Red Sonja is a character that Roy Thomas adapted from a very different character in a historical story that Robert E. Howard wrote that wasn't a Conan story. Thomas just liked the idea of a red-haired warrior woman who was Conan's equal. And so he created one. He took the name and changed everything else and made a terrific character who had her own. She's had her own comics. Dark Horse gave her a comic a couple of times, and Marvel. She had a comic at Marvel as well. I would love it if Red Sonja would come back. That would be wonderful. And the other big omission, of course, is King Kull. The Conan stories take place what would be roughly 12,000 years ago, after the fall of Atlantis. After the destruction of Atlantis and all of the glittering cities all around Atlantis, but before the rise of modern history, of written history, of recorded human history. Robert E. Howard had a lot of problems, but he was also a genius, and he came up with the idea that there's a lacunae that might exist there, where all sorts of things from the primordial world, dinosaurs, monsters, wizards, might still exist in the light of day. Before written history starts to work them out. It's a kind of a very Texan, very bloodthirsty version of The Lord of the Rings, where in the background of Lord of the Rings, while all the other highfalutin and very dramatic events are unfolding, slowly but surely we are feeling that the world is changing and that a less storyable future is dawning. It won't have little people, it won't have elves, it won't have ring wraiths or anything like that. It'll be men, and it'll be the world that we know. And stalking in the background of the Conan world, of the Conan mythos, is that same thing. that ordinary, recognizable reality is right around the corner from these stories. King Kull was king before Atlantis fell. He is the earliest of Robert E. Howard's great heroes. And although he had a barbaric history, similar to, in some ways, the barbaric history of Conan the Barbarian, his adventures take place once he is king. And he has a big supporting cast that is unknown in Robert E. Howard, other than King Kull. King Kull has a wonderful supporting cast. Star Trek style conflicting personalities cast, just fantastic to read. And it's been fantastic when it's been done well. Marvel did King Kull a few times, and they were by and large very enjoyable. Now that doesn't exhaust the possibilities. There's Bran McMorn, there's Solomon Kane, there are other marquee Robert E. Howard characters. But if they're doing Conan the Barbarian and The Savage Sword of Conan and Beilid, if these books are successful, if they catch on with the audience, and I can't believe they won't, considering how good these 2 issues have been, if they catch on, I would love it if we got King Kull and Red Sonja. That would be wonderful. But anyway, that is your Comics Wednesday for today. It's a thing that's certainly putting a smile on my face. It's just a bunch of Conan, old and new. That's wonderful. Marvel has nothing else in its current lineup to attract me in any way. They almost did. Today, they almost did. Today was also the first issue of a new launch of The Invaders, a new 21st century iteration of Marvel's first super team, a team, in their continuity, it's the first super team where Captain America, the original Human Torch, and the Submariner team up to fight the Nazis. Again, we're talking Roy Thomas, and again, we're talking just genius, where he goes back and says, well, in the 1940s, these characters did know each other, and they did team up from time to time. What if they made a superhero team? Not the All-Winners Squad, but a team called the Invaders, consisting of Prince Namor the Submariner, Captain America and his sidekick Bucky, and the Human Torch and his sidekick Toro. And the Invaders ran for a long time and was a terrific team comic book. And Marvel is relaunching it in a modern day version. Almost all of the characters are back, and it has an Alex Ross cover, the same guy who did the cover for Savage Sword of Conan. And I almost gave in, except that it appears that the first issue springboards from a storyline that was going on in the X-Men, and I don't know anything about it, and I'm a little tired of Marvel bootstrapping like that, so that you can't ever come into something cold. So every time I've tried it, I've always felt like I need to go buy 20 back issues in order to understand what's going on, and I don't like that feeling. I didn't get it at all in these Conan issues, of course, and I think I'm going to stick with that. Nothing else tempted me. So it was all Conan. The last few trips to the comic shop have been all Conan. Fine by me, you won't hear me complain. But anyway, that's your Comic Book Wednesday for today. We'll see what happens next week. I imagine there'll be more Conan, but it'll start to feel strange if our Comic Book Wednesdays are commandeered by non-superhero fare. So we'll have to keep an eye out for superheroes next week. Thank you, BookTube.